Good morning, students. Today we are going to read a chapter from your book First Flight from the Diary of Anne Frank, written by Anne Frank herself. But before we do that, let's know something about Anne Frank. Anneliese Marie Anne Frank was born on 12th June 1929, that's February to March 1945, was a German born Jewish girl, and you all have read about Nazism in Germany, and how Hitler had a grudge, or he was against the Jews. So she was from a Jewish family, and she was hiding with her family and four friends in Amsterdam during the German occupation of Netherlands during World War II. You have read about Holocaust and the concentration camps. So this is during that time when the Jews were, scared of Hitler because he would send them to concentration camps and kill them. So since she was a Jewish girl, she was into the hiding in Amsterdam when the Nazis had taken over Amsterdam. From Germany, they moved to Netherlands and occupied Amsterdam. As persecutions against Jewish population increased, the family went into hiding in July 1942 in hidden rooms in her father's Otto Frank's office building. After 2 years in hiding, the group was betrayed and transported to the concentration camp system, where Anne died of typhus in Bergen-Belsen within days of her sister, Margaret Frank. Her father, Otto, was the only survivor, and when he returned to Amsterdam after the war ended, he found that the diary that Anne Frank had written was still intact. So he thought that he should, share it with the world, and so that people know what all difficulties the Jewish had to go through while they were under the rule of Nazis. So it was named The Diary of a Young Girl. So the diary was given to Anne Frank on her 13th birthday by her father. And so the events that are covered are, you all know what is diary writing. So the day she started writing, it was 12th June 1942 until its final entry on 1st August 1944, when she wrote no more. It was eventually translated from original Dutch into many languages and became one of the world's most widely read books. There have been also several films, television, and theatrical productions, and even an opera based on the diary. Described as the work of a mature girl and insightful mind, the diary provides an intimate examination of daily life under Nazi occupation. And Frank has become one of the most renowned and discussed of the Holocaust victims. You all know what is Holocaust. Remember when they used to take them and they used to torture them and kill them? That was the Holocaust. You've already done that in grade 9, haven't you? So now let's read what are the musings. You understand what a musing means? All the things and thoughts that came to her mind and she wrote down in the diary will be given in this. Writing in a diary is a strange experience for someone like me. Not only because I have never written anything before, but also because it seems to me that later on neither I nor anyone else will be interested in the musing of a 13-year-old schoolgirl. Oh well, it doesn't matter. I feel like writing, and I have an even greater need to get all kinds of things off my chest. So he said, so to begin with, she said, nobody would be interested to know what my life is because I'm just an ordinary girl of 13 years. But then she needed a companion. She was so lonely, she needed a companion, and she couldn't find anybody better than a diary. Paper has more patience than people, I thought of this saying on one of those days when I was feeling a little depressed and was sitting at home with my chin in my hands, bored and listless, wondering whether to stay in or go out. I finally stared where I was brooding. Yes, paper does have more patience. And since I'm not planning to let anyone else read this step back notebook, grandly referred to as a diary, unless I should ever find a real friend, it probably won't make a bit of a difference. So again, she was very lonely, so she made diary her best friend. And what was the logic that she thought she should have a diary was that that paper has more patience than man. People will always criticize or give you opinions, but paper will never do that. It will just listen to what you have to say. So that is why she says patience is more in a paper than in men, because men do not have the patience to listen again and again to your thing. They get irritated, but paper never does. Let me put it more clearly, since no one will believe that a 13-year-old girl is completely alone in the world, because she had no friends, because they were in the hiding. I have loving parents and a 16-year-old sister, and there are about 30 people I can call friends. I have a family, loving aunts, and a good home. No, on the surface, I seem to have everything except my one true friend. All I think about when I am with friends is having a good time. I can't bring myself to talk about anything but ordinary, everyday things. We don't seem to be able to get any closer, and that's the problem. Maybe it's my fault that we don't confide in each other. In any case, that's just how things are, and unfortunately, they are not liable to change. This is why I have started the diary. So she said she has no best friends. Even when she was talking to other girls or any friends, she would not confide in them like your best friends. You tell all your secrets. She could not. So she thought it was better to have a diary that would know all her secrets. So who all were there in her family? Her family consisted of her mother, father, and her 16-year-old sister. To enhance the image of this long-awaited friend in my imagination, I don't want to jot down the facts in this diary the way most people would do, but I want the diary to be my friend, and I'm going to call this friend Kitty. So she called her diary, her best friend was Kitty, her diary. Since no one would understand a word of my stories to Kitty if I were to plunge right in, I would better provide a brief sketch of my life, much as I dislike doing so. She said, nobody would understand why I'm writing this diary unless they don't know anything about my life. So she's going to give you a brief sketch of her life and how things happened in her life. My father, now she's introducing her father to you. Now, who was the father? The most adorable father I have seen. Didn't marry my mother until he was 36. And she was 25. So father was 36, mother was 25, and my sister Margaret was born in Frankfurt in Germany in 1926. I was born on 12 June 1929. I lived in Frankfurt until I was 4. My father emigrated means moved from Germany to Holland in 1933. My mother, Edith Hollander Frank. So what is the name of the mother? Edith Hollander Frank. And the father's name was Otto Frank. Went with him to Holland in September, while Margaret and I were sent to Aachen to stay with our grandmother. Margaret went to Holland in December, and I followed in February, when I was plunked down on the table as a birthday present for Margaret. So she says that, when the father moved to Holland, the mother moved with him. So the sister, Margaret, and Anne had to stay back with their grandmother in Aachen. And only then later in December, Margaret went to Holland, and afterwards in February, she went there to be with her family. I started right away at the Montessori school. I stayed there until I was 6, at which time I started in the first form. First form means the first grade. In the 6th form, my teacher was Mrs. Cuperis, the headmistress. At the end of the year, we were both in tears as we said a heartbreaking farewell. So she was very fond of her headmistress, Mrs. Cuperis. In summer of 1941, Grandma fell ill and had to have an operation. So my birthday passed with a little celebration. Grandma died in January 1942. No one knows how often I think of her and still love her. This birthday celebration in 1942 was intended to make up for the other, and the grandma's candle was lit along with the rest. So this shows us, Anne Frank was very, very attached to her grandmother. She loved her very much, and when grandmother died, she missed her a lot. So on her birthday in 1942, when her birthday was there, she lit another candle in memory of her grandmother, which showed that she loved her grandmother very much and also missed her a lot. The 4 of us are still doing well. The 4 means the sister, the father, the mother, and Anne. And that brings me to the present day of 20th June 1942 and the solemn dedication of my diary. So with this, we will take a small recap. Let's quickly revise the points till now what we have then. That Anne got the diary on her 13th birthday. At first, she thought nobody would like to read her diary because she was only 13-year-old. But then slowly she started giving out the details about her father. He was very loving, and then he moved to Holland. Her mother went along with the father, and then both the girls later went and joined them. So in early years, she had to spend the time with her grandmother. Both the girls, Anne and her sister Margaret, had to spend their childhood with the grandmother. And when grandmother died, Anne was very, very upset. So to show that she really loved and remembered her grandmother, she lit a candle on her birthday in her fond memory of her grandmother. Now, this is the first diary entry that we're going to read. That is 20th June 1942. Dearest Kitty. Now, who's Kitty? Kitty is the name of the diary. Our entire class is quaking in its boot. Quaking means shaking in fear and nervous. Remember that when your result comes out, you all are doing that the same way. The reason, of course, is the forthcoming meeting in which the teachers will decide who will move to the next form and who will be kept back. So it is result time, who will be promoted and who will be not promoted. This is what they are all thinking. Half the class is making bets. Most of them are saying, I will pass, you will fail, or something like that. GN and I laugh ourselves silly at the two boys behind us, CN and Jax, who have staked their entire holiday savings on their bet. They both are betting so and so will pass, so and so will fail, all right. So, no, from morning to night it's you're going to pass, no I'm not, yes you are, no I'm not. Even GS, fleeting glances and my angry outbursts can't calm them down. If you ask me, there are so many dummies about a quarter of the class should be kept back. But teachers are the most unpredictable creatures on earth. So she says, according to me, half of the class should not be sent to the next grade. But then teachers are so unpredictable, means you cannot decide what goes on in the minds of the teachers and how they think and how they work. This is how a young girl thinks. And I'm sure most of you also think that way, isn't it? I get along pretty well with all my teachers. There are 9 of them, 7 men and 2 women. Mr. Keesing, the old fogey who teaches maths. He said, old fogey means he's an old-fashioned person, like you, likes to do things in order, discipline, very disciplined in the class. He's not like other teachers. And what does he teach them? He teaches maths. Was annoyed with me for ages. Why is he angry with her? Because she talked so much. After several warnings, he assigned me extra homework. And what was the homework? An essay on the subject, a chatterbox. A chatterbox? What can you write on that subject? What can you write about that? I would worry about that later, I decided. I jotted down the title in my notebook, tucked it in my bag, and tried to keep quiet. Now, what do you mean by chatterbox? Chatterbox means a person who talks a lot, chatters, keep talking on without any sense, keeps talking all the time. Most of you do that, don't you, in your class? So she was also one of the same kind of child who would talk a lot in the class, and Mr. Keesing was very, very upset with her. Instead of punishing her, beating her, what did he do? He told her to write an essay as a punishment. And what was it? The essay was titled A Chatterbox. Now, what did Anne Frank have to do about that? Let's find out. That evening, after I finished the rest of my homework, the note about the essay caught my eye. I began thinking about the subject while chewing the tip of my fountain pen. Anyone could ramble. Ramble means talk or write aimlessly, means without any aim, without any thinking, could write on any ramble on and leave big spaces between the words. But the trick was to come up with convincing arguments to prove the necessity of talking. She thought that, she could leave lines and fill in pages and just write something nonsense about the thing. But then there was one point. She had to tell me, Mr. Keesing, why was it important for her to talk in the class? So I thought and thought and thought. And suddenly I had an idea. I wrote the 3 pages Mr. Keesing had assigned me and was satisfied. I argued, now what did she write in the essay? That talking is a student's trait and that I would do my best to keep it under control. Trait means it's a habit with the students, and she would try her best to keep it under control and talk less. But I would never be able to cure myself of the habit, since my mother talked as much as I did, if not more. And there's not much you can do about inherited traits. So see, What argument she said? She said she tries to control, but she cannot help it because she has inherited this habit, or she has got this habit from her mother, who is also very talkative, and she cannot do anything about it because it's a habit that has come to her from her mother. Mr. Keesing had a good laugh at my arguments, but when I proceeded to talk my way through the next lesson, again while he was doing the work and she was talking, what did he do? He assigned me a second essay. This time it was supposed to be an incorrigible chatterbox. So what do you mean by incorrigible? Somebody who cannot be corrected. So some person who is all the time doing wrong things and cannot be brought to right path is called incorrigible. I handed it in, and Mr. Keesing had nothing to complain about for 2 whole lessons. However, during the 3rd lesson, he'd finally had enough. Anne Frank, as punishment for talking in the class, write an essay entitled Quack, 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 said Mistress Chatterbox. Now again, this was the 3rd time. Now she was again not listening to him. And what did he give her? Write another essay. Now this time the essay was titled Quack, 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 said the Mistress Chatterbox. So this is how she had to write. Now this is the 3rd time. Now what would Anne Frank do? The class roared. Everybody started laughing. I had to laugh too, though I thought I had really exhausted my ingenuity on the topic. Ingenuity means originality, inventiveness, or my creativity on writing on the topic of chatterboxes. It was time to come up with something else, something original. Now she had to write something very different from what she had already written. My friend Sam, who's good at poetry, offered to help me write the essay from beginning to end in verse. In verse means in poem form. They started because her friend was very good at writing poems. So she said, okay, we'll write it in the form of a poem. And I jumped for joy. Mr. Keesing was trying to play a joke on me with this ridiculous subject, but I will make sure the joke was on him. She said, Mr. Keesing always wanted to embarrass her by giving her these kind of, essays, and he thought that, she would be made fun of in the front of class, but she was very determined that she would not let him do that. In fact, she will try to prove him wrong. I finished my poem, and it was beautiful. It was about a mother duck and a father swan with 3 baby ducklings who were bitten to death by the father because they quacked too much. So now what did they quack quack? Since quacky quack is with ducks and swans, so there was a mother duck and the father swan who killed his children because they would talk too much. Luckily, Mr. Keesing took the joke in the right way. Now you understand what did it mean? So she was somewhere hinting to Mr. Keesing, but he was very good. He was very supportive. He did not punish her. He laughed and he read the poem to the class, adding his own comments, and to several other classes as well. So he was very happy. He read it to their class as well as other classes. Since then, I have been allowed to talk and haven't been assigned any extra homework. On the contrary, Mrs. Keesing's always making jokes these days. So this is here how she has told you about how teachers can be unpredictable, how he was very upset with Anne Frank for her habit of talking. In the first essay, she gave the argument that she was talking so much because she had got this habit from her mother. In the second essay, again, she wrote what was the need for her to talk. Finally, when he wanted to punish her really hard and gave her a very difficult topic, she wrote a poem in which she wrote about a mother duck and a father swan who killed the child because they were talking along. But Mr. Keesing was a nice teacher. He did not want to punish her in the real sense. He just wanted her to be disciplined. And in the bargain, what happened? She realized that she was so good at writing. So this is how teachers sometimes punish you without you actually knowing. You feel they are punishing you, but actually they're helping you to get away and find your strength. So this is how, children, you have to understand. This is a very interesting chapter and a very important one for your board exams also. As usual, I have attached a PDF file and I have given you question and answers. Children, this is my request to you once again. I have realized that you are not reading these chapters. If you would ask your seniors, that is last grade children, they would tell you how important it is for you to understand whatever topics I'm covering with you. they are very important, and a question will always come from Anne Frank. So you have to understand that you have to know the summary, you have to know the main topics from the chapter before you can answer them in the book. So please, I request you to view these videos that I'm posting so that you can understand them, and please put down the question and answers in your fair note. Thank you for listening to me. Have a great day till we meet again. Bye-bye.